What happens when a film is so intense, so raw, and so daring that entire governments attempt to erase it from existence? These movies were not just controversial, they were outright banned. Tonight, we delve into the 15 most brutal exploitation films of the 1960s that faced the ultimate punishment: banishment. How far did these filmmakers push the envelope, and why do their stories still ignite debates decades later? Get ready to uncover the hidden chronicles of cinema's most dangerous decade. Blood Feast, 1963. Every revolution has its origin, and for splatter cinema, that starting point was Blood Feast. Directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis, this film didn't aim for awards. Its purpose was to provoke strong reactions, whether shock, fainting, or fleeing the theater. The plot is minimal, centering on a crazed caterer under the influence of an obscure goddess who prepares a horrific feast far removed from any modern health standards. What Blood Feast truly delivered was a vivid flood of color, bright, sticky reds that were impossible to ignore, combined with DIY special effects that led audiences to question their own senses. Body parts disappeared or appeared in unexpected places, all shot on a shoestring budget under the blazing Florida sun. Critics were at a loss on how to respond, but drive-in audiences eagerly lined up, especially after rumors spread that barf bags were handed out as souvenirs. Despite being banned or heavily censored in multiple countries, Blood Feast opened the gates for low-budget horror filmmaking and imparted a critical lesson to filmmakers: if you can't go big, aim straight for the gut. The Saddest, released in 1963, carved its niche through sheer unfiltered aggression rather than atmosphere or elaborate scares. Directed by James Landis, the film plunges viewers into a stark black-and-white nightmare set in a sun-drenched junkyard, where a gun-wielding lunatic, inspired by a real criminal, stalks his unsuspecting victims. When three school teachers inadvertently stumble into his domain, the tension mounts in a slow, relentless rise of dread and brutality. Arch Hall Jr., known previously for his musical comedies, delivers a chilling turn that is as unsettling as any masked monster. Cinematographer Vilmo Zsigmond, then a newcomer, captured the film with a raw, almost documentary feel, using close-ups and unyielding pacing to generate an unbearable sense of tension that leaves viewers desperate for the nightmare to end. Although critics rejected the film for its brutality, genre enthusiasts recognized The Saddest as a foundational piece for the emerging American horror style, a precursor to countless slasher and home invasion films. Stripped of fancy effects or haunted house setups, it relied entirely on the menace of a single deranged individual tormenting innocent people in a world with no escape. Its cold-blooded portrayal triggered bans and controversies in various theaters, but ultimately marked an early warning of the future direction horror cinema would take. The Touch of Her Flesh, 1967. Michael Finley's The Touch of Her Flesh stands out as one of the most intimate and unhinged entries in exploitation cinema. Centered on a gripping narrative of revenge and obsession, the film follows a weapons dealer who, after a devastating accident caused by his unfaithful wife, loses his sight and descends into a bitter madness. This descent leads him on a violent spree across New York City's gritty side, with Finley himself embodying the tormented anti-hero and his real-life partner portraying the object of his wrath. What makes the film particularly unsettling are its murder scenes, staged with mannequins, dim lighting, and a raw, almost reckless directorial style that intensifies the shock factor. Critics dismissed the film as mere gutter trash, but audiences flocked to grindhouse theaters, eager to see just how far the film would push boundaries. The success of The Touch of Her Flesh sparked two even more audacious sequels, cementing a cult trilogy that reveled in breaking taboos. Amid the collapse of the old studio system and shifting cinematic rules, Finley demonstrated that outrage could translate into box office success. The Flesh trilogy didn't just provoke, it hammered viewers with its unapologetic transgressions. If you're seeking a deep dive into the origins of the women in prison film genre, Olga's House of Shame is an essential stop. Released in 1964 as the third installment of the infamous Olga series, this black and white film plunges viewers into a harsh world defined by cruelty, control, and ruthless authority. Audrey Campbell delivers a chilling performance as Olga, a warden whose methods of discipline include humiliation and psychological manipulation. Shot with a gritty, documentary-style realism, the movie focuses less on plot and more on the intense dynamics of power and domination. In an era when most films avoided controversial themes, Olga's house of shame stormed into the spotlight, attracting the attention and ire of censors across multiple American cities. Despite mainstream critical dismissal, the film found a devoted audience drawn to its rebellious aura. The character of Olga herself became a cult icon, influencing subsequent genre films and quietly permeating underground culture. Though widely panned by traditional critics, this gritty exploitation feature stood as a defiant alternative to polished Hollywood fare, firmly planting its flag in cinema's realm of the forbidden and provocative. Ray Dennis Steckler, known as the master of low-budget chaos, delivered his crowning work of mayhem with The Thrill Killers. The film unleashes a city gripped by terror as a group of escaped psychiatric patients rampage through Los Angeles, each one a ticking time bomb intent on leaving their mark of violence. Steckler even appears on screen himself, cash flag in hand, as he transforms the city into a playground for raw, unfiltered brutality and randomness. Shot guerrilla style, often capturing unsuspecting bystanders in the frame, the film's editing jerks wildly from one frenzied scene to another, delivering an erratic pace that heightens the sense of unpredictable danger. Mainstream critics dismissed it as amateurish and incoherent, but to passionate genre fans, The Thrill Killers was proto-slasher gold. Its rough cinematography and real feeling of menace laid the foundation for the slasher craze that would explode a decade later. Despite bans and censorship complaints, the movie's legend only grew, proving that you don't need $1 million budget to terrify audiences. All it takes is a wild concept and the courage to shoot fast and loose, a testament to Steckler's fearless approach to pushing the boundaries of horror cinema. Before Herschel Gordon Lewis unleashed the carnage of Blood Feast, he ventured into the murky waters of controversy with Scum of the Earth. Unlike the visceral gore of his later work, this film explored the grim realm of exploitation through a narrative centered on illicit photography. The storyline follows a young woman who, seeking a quick way to make money, becomes ensnared in a dark underworld of manipulation and moral decay. Framed superficially as a cautionary tale, Scum of the Earth was clearly designed to provoke and challenge the established norms of cinematic decency. Lewis employed a raw, almost documentary-like visual style paired with rapid-fire shooting to create an unsettling sense of authenticity that blurs the line between morality play and exploitation. At a time when the motion picture production code was still exerting influence, this film skated on the edge of acceptability, daring both censors and audiences to confront its unflinching depiction of human vulnerability and vice. Critics dismissed it as tasteless, but its impact was profound, paving the way for a new wave of cinema that relished discomfort and challenged authority by pushing the boundaries of what could be shown on screen. Russ Meyer was no stranger to stirring controversy, and with Mudhoney, he delivered a film that blended sleaze with epic storytelling. Set in a deteriorating rural town plagued by corruption, religious fanaticism, and unchecked desire, the movie brings together a cast of drifters, hypocrites, and schemers, painting a vivid picture of moral decay. Meyer financed the project himself, channeling his frustration with sanitized Hollywood fare into a work that is part Southern Gothic, part crime thriller, and part over-the-top melodrama. Critics struggled to categorize it. Was it savage satire, a dirt-stained epic, or merely trash with grand ambitions? Commercially, Mudhoney stumbled initially, but underground audiences embraced its unflinching examination of taboo subjects, elevating it to cult status. Its bold confrontation of hypocrisy and societal rot challenged mainstream sensibilities, making it clear that Meyer's boundary pushing was about more than mere thrills. It was an assault on the walls of acceptable cinema. Something Weird, 1967. Something Weird lives up to its name as a prime example of avant-garde exploitation cinema from the late 1960s. Directed by Herschel Gordon Lewis, known for his pioneering splatter films, this work ventures boldly into an uncharted fusion of horror, crime, and psychedelic chaos. Set against the backdrop of the flower power era, the narrative is deliberately fragmented, weaving together a narrative involving a disfigured psychic, an alluring witch, shadowy government agencies, and a series of surreal hallucinations. Lewis fully embraces a cinematic style that mimics a hallucinogenic experience, employing garish filters, stuttering strobe lights, and abrupt edits to disorient the viewer, effectively capturing the frayed edges of consciousness during the height of the countercultural movement. The plot itself resists cohesion, instead favoring an atmosphere of madness and paranoia. Critics were often baffled or off-put by its disjointed form and provocative content, yet it resonated powerfully with cult audiences hungry for something outside the mainstream. In a period when major studios steered clear of overt drug references and psychedelic themes, Something Weird fearlessly pushed these boundaries, planting early seeds for the acid horror subgenre that would emerge in later years. Ultimately, the film is less about making sense and more about daring viewers to confront a 90-minute ride into unsettling madness. It remains a striking, if perplexing, artifact of 1960s exploitation cinema, inviting audiences to question just how much cinematic insanity they are willing to endure and embrace. The Wild, Wild World of Jane Mansfield, 1968, stands apart in the realm of exploitation cinema, capturing the tantalizing blend of glamour and tragedy associated with the iconic star. Originally intended as an international documentary exploring shifting cultural attitudes, the film underwent a radical transformation following Jane Mansfield's tragic car accident. What audiences received was an unusual patchwork, a collage of newsreel footage, travelogue scenes, and provocative performances tied together with Mansfield's pre-recorded narration. This posthumous spectacle blurs the lines between documentary and exploitation, creating a fevered dream that reflects on fame, loss, and scandal. The filmmakers stitched in tabloid headlines and even coverage of Mansfield's funeral, turning the film into a haunting meditation on the fleeting nature of celebrity. Critics lambasted it as shameless and even ghoulish, while audiences were drawn in by the promise of a final glimpse of a legend. The Wild, Wild World of Jane Mansfield faced censorship in several countries, which balked at its content and unconventional approach. Yet, on the midnight movie circuit, it emerged as a lucrative and unforgettable piece, emblematic of 1960s success. The film remains a striking reminder of Hollywood's insatiable appetite for spectacle, even in death, and a vivid artifact of a decade where boundaries were made to be challenged. Samuel Fuller was never one to shy away from bold storytelling, and The Naked Kiss is a prime example of his fearless approach. From its very first scene, where a woman fiercely confronts her abuser, ripping off a wig to reveal a bald scalp, viewers know they are about to experience something intense and provocative. The narrative centers on Kelly, a former city worker seeking a fresh start in a small town, only to uncover the dark underbelly lurking behind its idyllic facade. Fuller bravely confronts taboo topics like hypocrisy and abuse of power, weaving in a subplot so provocative that many theaters outright refuse to screen the film. With its sharp dialogue, stark visuals, and an atmosphere charged with unpredictability, The Naked Kiss was unquestionably ahead of its time. Critics initially decried it as lurid and unsuitable for polite audiences, and the UK kept it off their screens until 1990. Yet, with time, Fuller's uncompromising vision has been recognized as a classic in exploitation cinema, a film that uses shock not merely for titillation but to challenge viewers' comfort zones and moral assumptions. Satan in High Heels, 1962. Satan in High Heels slinks onto the screen with a jazzy soundtrack and a sharp edge. This film serves as a prime example of early 60s urban sleaze, chronicling the rise of Stacey Kane, a tough and cunning performer who arrives in the city determined to reinvent herself. She cuts a ruthless path, stepping over rivals and manipulating both men and women to achieve her goals. Filmed on location in authentic New York clubs, the movie pulses with an air of gritty realism and a noir-inspired atmosphere filled with smoke-filled rooms and dangerous intentions. What set Satan in High Heels apart and stirred controversy was not only its depiction of crime and corruption but its central character, a woman who rejects the roles of victim or damsel in distress, instead wielding power and control. The film subtly hinted at same-gender attraction and power struggles, themes that unsettled censors under the fading motion picture production code. Critics struggled to categorize the film's gritty portrayal of empowerment, but it quietly resonated with audiences who perhaps saw for the first time an anti-heroine who was as ambitious, complex, and ruthless as any male counterpart. Argentinian director Armando Boe teamed up with his fearless muse Isabel Sarli to create a cinematic storm with Fuego. Released in 1969, this film presented a tale of obsession and uncontrollable passion that fiercely challenged the conservative norms of its time and place. Sarli's explosive performance, with wild, intense eyes and an unrelenting energy, quickly made her an icon of raw female desire on screen. The film's candid portrayal of sensuality and emotional turmoil provoked authorities to label it immoral, leading to outright bans in Argentina and censorship in countries such as Spain, Brazil, and parts of the United States. Critics often dismissed Fuego as mere trash, but for devoted fans, it represented a powerful statement, a woman embracing her desires unapologetically amid a repressive cultural climate. Through its complex mix of Catholic guilt, searing emotion, and fearless confrontation of taboo subjects, Fuego became a forbidden flame, one that continued to smolder underground despite relentless censorship. Love Camp 7, 1969. When discussing the origins of Nazi exploitation cinema, Love Camp 7 stands as an unavoidable milestone. Set during World War II in a fictional prison camp, the film follows two undercover agents who infiltrate the harsh environment, only to endure a relentless barrage of cruelty and humiliation inflicted by merciless guards. Its purpose was clear from the start: to shock and provoke. The film faced outright bans in the UK, being deemed unacceptable under any circumstances, and later found itself on the notorious Video Nasties list in the 1980s, becoming a prime target for censorship and underground circulation. Despite universal critical condemnation, Love Camp 7's impact cannot be overlooked. It inadvertently gave birth to a new subgenre by pushing boundaries and overturning taboos with reckless abandon. Even decades later, its screenings are rare and mostly confined to academic circles or underground cinephile communities. This forbidden relic of the 1960s serves as a stark reminder of a time when cinematic shock was wielded as an act of rebellion, challenging social norms and censorship alike. Before mainstream films openly embraced discussions of free love, Russ Meyer was already challenging societal norms with Vixen. Set against the rugged backdrop of the Canadian wilderness, the story follows a bold, independent woman who captivates, seduces, and scandalizes everyone she encounters. This film spared no taboo, boldly addressing themes that broke through family and social conventions. Unsurprisingly, censorship boards raided theaters, branded the film obscene, and outright banned it in several states. However, Meyer stood his ground, championing the film's artistic and social significance, ultimately winning landmark court battles. Vixen became the first X-rated film in the US to achieve major box office success, grossing over $7 million, a staggering figure for its era. Its unapologetic energy, audacious style, and defiance of conventional rules transformed Vixen into a cultural lightning rod. While audiences adored it, critics largely rejected it. In the end, Vixen's rebellious spirit paved the way for a new chapter in adult-oriented cinema. The Curious Doctor, Hump, released in 1969, stands out as a bizarre fusion of mad science, monster horror, and psychedelic chaos. Originating from Argentina, this peculiar film centers on a deranged scientist who embarks on strange experiments aimed at prolonging life by methods that incense censors worldwide. When the film reached American audiences, it was further sensationalized with additional scenes, some filmed without the original director's consent, patched together without concern for continuity, creating a true Frankenstein's monster of cinema. The story features masked henchmen, hypnotized victims, and dialogue so bizarre it sometimes borders on parody. Critics were harsh, dismissing the film for its incoherence, but over time, it earned cult status. The Curious Doctor, Hump proved that in the realm of exploitation films, storytelling logic is optional, but audacity is paramount. Though repeatedly banned for its outrageous content, it found a dedicated audience, affirming that genuine oddities always carve out their own niche regardless of censorship attempts. The exploitation films of the 1960s unapologetically shattered cinematic norms and censorship barriers, igniting debates that resonate even today. Their enduring legacy highlights the fearless creativity and boldness of filmmakers who ventured into forbidden territories, forever altering the landscape of film history. If this journey through the most banned and provocative films of the 1960s sparked your curiosity, don't hesitate to subscribe, like, share, or leave a comment below. Join the conversation and help keep the stories of cinema's most daring era alive.